Let's be real, Hersheypark has a really strong coaster lineup that most parks can't compare to. Though they do have a great diverse group of coasters, there are plenty of other coaster types that I would love to see come to the park. Now to preface, I personally do not think that most of these coasters will ever come to Hersheypark. In fact, I'm purposely categorizing these as unrealistic additions. I don't think these would ever make sense for the park to add, but I thought it would still be fun to share what I think the park could add. These are some additions that are unrealistic that I also would really love to see. Let's get into it. The coaster type on this list that I want to see built at Hersheypark the most is a B&M flying coaster. I think that it's more unlikely than likely, but I think the likely side has good argument behind it. For those of you who are not familiar, a flying coaster positions the riders headfirst during the ride, almost like you're a superhero flying through the sky as you face the ground down below you. The closest type of attraction to a flying coaster that is already at the park is probably Great Bear, but they are very different types of ride experiences. I've been on Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Great Adventure, and the ride took me by a very big surprise. In fact, I loved it so much that it was my favorite coaster I have ever ridden at the time. Let's say Hersheypark was going to be getting a flying coaster. Where would it go? And what would the ride layout be like? Well, to start, I would want it to be in Chocolate Town where it could swoop over Spring Creek with some crazy near-miss elements. By the way, all of the coasters that are on this list I would imagine being in the back untouched section of Chocolate Town, but especially for this flying coaster, that's where I think that this would be. I would prefer if it was an original layout, but if it was a Superman clone, I wouldn't be mad either. The one thing that this coaster would absolutely need to feature in its layout is a pretzel loop. That is the key element on any flying coaster, in my opinion, and is something that I hope every coaster lover can experience at some point in their life. I wouldn't expect it to be super tall or fast. Just a flying coaster with your traditional flying coaster elements would be absolutely grand. But realistically, I don't know. I know many people have rumored about a contract Hersheypark potentially has gotten with B&M, where they could get like 3 coasters in a span of some years, but that's all speculation and leads me to believe that this idea is unfortunately unrealistic at this time. The next coaster I would absolutely love to see Hersheypark unrealistically get is a Mack Extreme Spinning Coaster. Now hopefully you can recognize why this is unrealistic, since Laugh Track is already a spinning coaster at the park, but I've always thought that these coasters look like so much fun. 2 examples of these coasters are Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City in Missouri and Ride to Happiness at Plopsaland in Belgium. These coasters usually feature launches and inversions at high speeds, all while your car spins during the ride. I'm convinced that if Hersheypark added one of these coasters, it would be my favorite in the park. Both of these exciting coasters have super strong first elements, one of which is a vertical drop, and the other one is a JoJo roll. Imagine experiencing both of these while you're spinning though. These coasters also feature high bank turns and quick transitions from one element to another. Though I've never been on a coaster like this, I'd like to believe that they are highly re-rideable as long as you don't mind the spinning aspect of the ride. What also makes the ride experience so much better is the fact that the only restraint you get is a lap bar. Similar to Skyrush or Candemonium, you're going to feel very exposed, which makes the ride even more thrilling. And like I mentioned before though, it's pretty unlikely that Hersheypark would add anything of this sort to the park while Laugh Track is still standing. It's unfortunate because Laugh Track doesn't really spin as much as other spinning coasters of its kind, but I completely understand why. It's in an amusement park that caters towards families which don't typically want to ride thrilling coasters, so it makes sense why Hersheypark would go for a more family version of this attraction. But I still think it would absolutely be insane if Hersheypark could get their hands on one of these coasters. I think the next coaster type that has a pretty straightforward reason as to why it wouldn't be realistic at Hersheypark is a Giga Coaster. I'm actually going to clump in the Strata Coaster with the Giga Coaster because these 2 types of coasters are just simply too tall. A lot of people know that Hersheypark has to get a lot of different clearances from the local government to build tall attractions, and I think that coasters that are as high as a Giga or Strata would just be too tall. Most Giga coasters are made by B&M and feature a height of 300 plus feet with several incredible airtime moments. Orion, Leviathan, and Fury 325 are some notable Giga coasters. As for Strata coasters, they are coasters that reach a max height of 400 plus feet. I think a Strata coaster is even more unlikely compared to a Giga because of the proximity to King Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. King Ka is currently the tallest coaster in the world, so Hersheypark would have to be very serious and try to compete with the coaster as such. Both of these coaster types are super fast, which makes them super fun, and they also take up quite a lot of land. I don't think that even with the leftover Chocolate Town space they could fit either one of these types of attractions, but imagine one of them in the space, it would be pretty amazing. The next coaster is actually a prototype from S&S, which is the Axis coaster. This model of coaster looks so incredibly interesting to me. There is nothing else like it out there. I included it on this list simply because it is a prototype, which is why I find it kind of hard to believe that Hersheypark would get one right now, but the park has installed prototypes in the past. They also like to add coasters that break records, as many of them have in the past, so I would hope that if they would consider this type of coaster, then they could market it as the first of its kind. The Axis coaster is a horizontally spinning coaster car that traverses a track where drops and rotations of that track can cause your car to flip upside down at moments you probably wouldn't expect. There have been a few layouts released by S&S for what this ride could potentially look like at a park, which Hersheypark could definitely go with, and I would be satisfied. I think because there isn't a coaster like this installed at another park, any model of this coaster would be fair game. New and original layouts are absolutely possible with this coaster type, but as I said, I feel like it would be fair and smart for Hersheypark to get a layout that S&S has already prepared for parks. These don't appear to take up much land, so it is something that I could borderline see Hersheypark getting if they were really up to it, but let's just say overall it would be an extremely welcome addition if you ask me. This next coaster type might be a weird one to most of you, but this is a Mack bobsled coaster. You can find these at multiple parks in Europe as well as King's Dominion in Virginia. These are trackless coasters whose trains consist of multiple cars that freely bank along a chute, mimicking the movements of a bobsled. Now, I personally don't think Hersheypark would ever get one of these coasters. Bobsled coasters in general are a dying breed and are not popular in the roller coaster market anymore like they used to, but I appreciate a good bobsled coaster. I've only been on Flying Turns at Knoebels, which is an in-house wooden bobsled, but I've heard that these Mack bobsleds are pretty similar in ride experience. I love Flying Turns. I think it has some really good lateral forces throughout the ride, and I think that knowing Hersheypark gears towards a family audience, that they would benefit a lot from this style of coaster. It is not a ride that is super intense, nor does it have crazy elements or maneuvers, which is why it could fit their lineup really, really well. There is nothing else like it at Hersheypark, and would provide a very unique ride experience that people can't get anywhere that is too close to Hershey, Pennsylvania. I would have no clue what they would attempt to theme this ride to, but I think that also plays into why this wouldn't really be a likely candidate for Hersheypark's next coaster. The last coaster type that I would absolutely love to see added to Hersheypark is a Mack Giant Dipper. This is basically a winged coaster with one car, 2 rows, and features steep drops, inversions, and outward banking turns. There are a few Big Dippers built, 2 being Lost Gravity in the Netherlands and Dynamite in Germany. Something that I can appreciate about these attractions is pacing. From start to finish, it appears like you are zooming through the layout, with the exception of some of the hang time you might get during an inversion. These are also generally compact attractions that don't take up as much land as some other types of coasters on the market. They are rides that generally aren't super tall or fast, but can definitely pack a punch, which is something I think Hersheypark could utilize very well in Chocolate Town. The reason why I don't think a Mack Big Dipper would come to Hersheypark is because it too closely resembles Skyrush. Not to mention that a Big Dipper has not been built in the US, but Hersheypark I would think would be the park willing to change that. Not only do they feature those steep drops and inversions, but they can include some incredible pops of ejector airtime. One thing that I would be concerned about is capacity. I feel as if these types of attractions are meant to belong at smaller parks that don't have attendance levels as high as Hersheypark. But I think it would be fun for them to get one of these anyways. Super cool looking. I really don't think at this moment right now that any of these coasters would come to Hersheypark logistically and realistically, but now you get a chance to know what things I would love to see the park get regardless. What kinds of unrealistic coasters do you think Hersheypark should receive next? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more Hersheypark content from the Sweet Seat. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.